All right. Good evening to everybody, or good day. I'm Art Schnitzer, and I am having to re-record our last It Matters session because once again, I forgot to hit the record button. So you will have a clean, uninterrupted copy tonight for our talk that we did recently on some keys to growing your church. So welcome whoever is viewing this. I hope you get something out of it that'll help you in your uh, adventure in growing your church. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that I believe are foundational to growing our churches. So part of this uh, part of this lesson came into being from a recent question that I had received. Somebody had messaged me and asked me a question that I have been asked several times through the years. And it's someone with, a little bit smaller church. I believe they run somewhere around 40, 45. And they were just kind of casually asking me for, kind of brainstorm, give me an idea or two of something, some kind of a nugget, in essence, is what they're asking that will help me to grow my church. And I probably disappointed them somewhat in my answer to them, because I believe that there are so many intricate little facets to growing a church that it's not something that we can just answer with one simple suggestion of a book or one simple suggestion of what to do for outreach. There are many variables involved in growing a church, and especially for sustainable growth. And so, I'm a realist, and so I answered the individual in the best way that I could. And within the answer were several of the items that I'm going to be talking about here tonight. Uh, a lot of what I talk about here on It Matters initially, initially, these monthly sessions were to be geared for our AAC churches, which obviously our AAC churches are church plants or smaller churches in still the stage of very early growth and getting things established. But these principles that I'm going to talk about here tonight are not only necessary for our smaller works, but these are principles that are absolutely required regardless of the size of church that you're pastoring or attempting to pastor. So I'm going to go ahead and begin to plow into this tonight. Get out of it what you can. If you don't get anything out of it, I'm sorry you wasted an hour, is all that I can say. But let's begin our talk here. There are always potential issues or barriers that can hinder church growth. Always potential hinders or barriers that can hinder church growth. And so, having never been to most of your churches, I will only be able tonight to make some general fundamental statements. By that I mean I'll make fundamental statements that apply to any church. I don't care the size. These are fundamentals that apply to any church and need to begin to be instituted very, very early on when you begin to establish or plant your church. So, but sometimes within individual churches, there are potential issues or barriers that are present that can hinder the growth. And if you're not aware of them, sometimes it helps to counsel with someone or get another set of eyes on what is going on. If you have something repeatedly going on that you feel like is hindering, something begins to come to mind, or a thought occurs to you that there are other issues besides just the normal things that happen in the growth process of a church. First, there's no doubt about it. Realistically, growing a church is not easy, obviously. And it can become all the more complicated by today's spirit, very prevalent spirit of non-commitment to anything. People just don't want to be committed. And that goes for young couples, youth. They're being raised up in a world that they're teaching them not to commit to anything. But on the other side of the coin, God is able with a handful of committed people to do anything. Know that. And I don't care how big or small that handful of people is. Jesus used 12 initially to turn the world up, their world upside down. So we know anything is possible. But committed people, if you get committed people around you, just a handful of committed people, and by committed, I mean those who are willing to pray with you, to fast with you, to really lock in, who are, there for the long haul. They're committed to seeing the work that you're doing grow. Those are the people you want to spend time with. Those are the people that you want around you and be training and working with, to be that core that you're wanting to grow and work with. But with a handful of committed people, I'll say it again, you can grow a church. You can grow a church. Amen. So to get going here, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of fire off a shotgun, so to speak, of just throw some things out there. They're not in any particular order other than the very first one that I will mention here. I'm just going to throw some ideas out there of things that, in my opinion, again, I've been an outreach director in churches for over 40 years, small churches, medium churches, large churches. I go to a larger church right now, FAC Maryville. I'm on staff there. And so first thing, and I'm going to throw this out there. I know that many of you understand this, but it still just bears repeating. It bears to be placed in context with what I'm talking about here. Some keys to growing your church is our topic. And so right off the bat, I'm going to say this, that what we all need in our ministries is more prayer and fasting time, less unnecessary activities, and more concentrated, focused prayer and fasting days. There's not a church that is in the history of Pentecost, apostolic world, UPC, ALJC, any of the other organizations. There's not a church, there's not a pastor out there that has grown a church to any reasonable size, to any great size, without them at some point realizing the real value of prayer, that this is the work that is done hand in hand with the Lord. It's the Lord's church. It's not our church. It's not any pastor's church. So allowing the Lord to fight those battles and to get us over all the necessary hurdles to get that ground broken up in our communities and get the attention of people and get people coming our way and winning people to the Lord. More prayer and fasting time is always in order as a foundation. So, and I trust that if you're out there and you're pastoring right now, or you're trying to break ground in a church plant, that you totally understand that, because that is something we need to lock into. And I'm not going to do a whole lesson or talk on prayer here, but I wanted to lay that as the foundation. Obviously, there are things we can do, but nothing is going to yield more power in the Spirit to aid in giving us direction than our prayer and our fasting time. Less unnecessary activities. Sometimes a couple of times a year, but at least once a year or so, I think it's very wise for all of us to do something that I'll just call a time audit, to see where we're spending our time, how we're spending our time. We do that if you're smart with money. You're doing that with finances. You're keeping a budget. You're keeping an eye on your finances and where your money's going. If you're being wise financially, a good steward, you're keeping an audit, so to speak, of where your finances are going. And sometimes we need to do that with our time to make sure that in the course of us trying to build a church, that we're not wasting a whole lot of time that could be used in perhaps more productive ways. A good time audit will reveal that. A good, honest time audit will reveal that. All right, so enough of that. So The next thing I want to talk about here is the importance of having a clear vision of what you're wanting to, what you're wanting to accomplish in your city. A clear vision, a mission statement. You can call it what you like. A mission statement, a concise, again, focused mission statement, a vision. Now, either of those, a vision or a mission statement, without a game plan is simply a wish or a pipe dream. If you don't couple a game plan that step by step will help to get you along the road of what your mission statement is, or what your vision is, that God-given vision that you have, it's a pipe dream. This is just, again, my opinion here. You want to make sure your vision is realistic from God, not pie in the sky. And I know that, and I read on Facebook recently, somebody had put a statement by one of our great preachers. I can't even think of what one it was, but I recall at the time it was one of our well-known preachers who threw out a statement in a message, which I totally agree with. That he said that if your vision or if your vision is does not make people around you, and I might be not quoting it exact, but the essence of it was, if your vision is not making people around you think that you're crazy, your vision is too small. Well, again, I understand that, I get that. I know that it sounds good in a message, and I do understand it. We need to have great faith. If it's something that we can do, why do we need God to help us? So when we're having faith for something, we need to have faith big enough that it's something that we couldn't do on our own. We absolutely have to have God do it. I get that. The other side of the coin, though, as far as having a vision that people look at and think you're crazy, that's kind of and I'll just call it sort of a cute idea, a cute statement. We don't want that to be a reality where we prove to those people that maybe we are a little crazy. And I mean that on the negative side. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about to clarify. I sat under somebody once who, when we first came up to Tennessee, who it wasn't in this organization. I came from UPC, and they were running about 35 people. And I knew going in, it was the only UPC church anywhere near us, and even that was 45 minutes away. And I knew this pastor a little bit, just in my visits to the area before we moved here. And he was running this for 11 or 12, 13 years, whatever it was. And I told my wife before we moved up here that that there's always a reason why somebody stays at 30 to 35 in their church for 10 years plus. There's always a reason. And again, not taking anything away from the value of a small church in a small community. If a church at 30 to 35, as a pastor of that church, you're thoroughly convinced that God has brought everybody to that church that he wants saved in that community, then you can rest assured that you should have peace about that. But the reality is, I believe there are always reasons that a church does not grow beyond a 30 to 35 barrier. So I told my wife there's always a reason. We'll discover what it is. Sometimes it is simply you don't have the people that you need at a particular point to help you grow. Sometimes it can be just a people or gifting issue, and you're waiting for God to send people to help you get to that next level. Well, we went out there, and I've been an outreach director at that point for about 30 years. And had high hopes of helping this pastor to grow the church. We had other people. It wasn't just on me. We started to make some very positive moves and setting up some of the things that I do when I go to a church. But see, this pastor was very, very unrealistic on the side that I'm talking about here, having an unrealistic vision. he kept talking about, in fact, had it on his webpage, that God had given him a vision that he was going to grow this church to 3,000. Okay, to 3,000 is what I said, 3,000. And now this pastor was, in my estimation, never ever going to be a pastor of 3,000 ever. It was very, very apparent very quickly. At number one, and then number two, to bring validity to what I'm trying to explain here, within a couple of years of us coming, he quit the ministry, divorced his wife. Him and his wife both backslid, and they're both married to different people today, okay, and not in ministry. So, and I won't get into a lot of details and so forth, but make sure that your vision is a realistic vision for your skills. Make sure it truly is from God, not just from you looking around at other churches and dreaming one of those Walter Mitty dreams of what you would like to be, okay, in the flesh, what you'd like to be, the pastor of 1,000. All those are great to have faith for and so forth, but what I'm saying is we need to take steps along the way. Because the next thing I'm going to mention here is getting people behind your vision. Now, getting people behind your vision, I've got rally people around your mission statement. For you to be able to do that, your people need to be able to buy into your vision and your mission. And so part of them buying into it, there is certain equations that go through any normal person's mind when a vision is thrown out there or a mission statement is thrown out there. That equation being looking at the pastor, the facility, all of those things to help them to buy in to your vision. And so you may down the road pastor 1,000 saints. You may grow your church to 1,000. Not impossible. It's done, doable. With God, all things are possible. I know that. I believe that. I've been involved with churches that are, pushing 1,000 in growth, being a part of it, working in outreach in those churches. And I believe the church that I'm in is going to blow through 1,000, all that. Pastor Carpenter is obviously, and the staff, the ministerial family, well equipped, well braced, ready to do that. They are believable when they talk those numbers. We have a building that will seat 2 times that many, and so we're ready for it. It's a realistic vision for First Apostolic Church of Maryville. But what I'm saying is visions. I believe we can have a vision for that future. If God gave you that vision for the future, that's wonderful. But if you're running 30 or 35 right now, it might be a good idea to set your next goal to 45 or 50. And I'll explain why I say that in just a minute. We'll look at some numbers here. But you want to rally people, get people behind your vision early on. I don't care if you're running 12. Man, let them know you've got a vision, get a mission statement, and get them excited about it. Enthusiasm sells. People buy into enthusiasm when they see somebody that is really committed and excited, genuine excitement, not false excitement, genuinely excited. You showing in all your actions that you really believe what you're preaching. You really believe what you're showing them as far as and telling them as far as the vision you have for them to get to the next step. Get them to fall in love with the mission and the vision. Now let's talk in numbers here. Initially, your goal may be your goal and your vision for the next year or so may be to grow from 25 to 40. Now let me give it to you. Let me explain this through a little bit different eyes. If you grow your church this year from 25 to 40 in a year, that constitutes 72% growth. If you grow your individual church by 72% this year, you are probably, without a doubt, and I'm not off by more than a percentage, I can assure you, you're in the top 5% growth rate of every church in America of any denomination, a 72% in 1 year growth rate. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we need to keep our vision in steps. Give you an example of visions. Okay. Joseph had a vision as a very young man, but the vision that he had, he spoke of too soon, and it ended up getting him thrown in a pit, becoming a servant, and then a prisoner. Now, through all of those nasty things that happened to him, God developed in him a lot of wisdom. And without him having to tout his gifting, he became second in command of all of Egypt, the greatest kingdom that was around in his day. And so that's, to me, in many ways, a story of somebody who gets a vision from God and tries to tell everybody around them a little too quickly when they're not ready to accept that person that they're looking at right now is capable of that vision being fulfilled through. So he didn't rally anybody behind his vision early on. But when the fruition of the vision came, when God had him prepared and all the circumstances around him ready, everybody believed in Joseph and his fulfillment of the vision that he had, the dream that he had. And so, there's a time and a place to reveal all of the vision and the dream that you may have. You need to sometimes early on unleash it in steps along the way. I'm working with, just talk about, goals and so forth and vision. I'm working, for example, right now with a church that I'll be working with for all of 2019. They've asked me to work with them for the entire year. I work with them and meet with them and their different leaders and different hostesses and doing training for every area of their church and beginning to help them to organize for church growth and working with them in every aspect. So they're running right now about, their numbers are, they're running 165 averaging in a Sunday service, which is great. That's good. But they've never broken through the 200 barrier, and that's why they feel like they've hit a ceiling. And so they're reaching out for some help to go through that 200 barrier. Well, first of all, let me say this about the 200 barrier. You may not know this, but only 15% of all churches, all denominations in America ever hit 200 members. So if you start averaging and you get to a point of 200 members, you're already in the top 15 percentile of all churches in America of every denomination, just for your information. So our goal this year is to try to push the attendance from 165, it was either 165 or 168, on up where their average attendance on their Sunday morning service is 200 members. That's our goal. That's what we're believing. That's what we're talking about. It's realistic, it's believable, it's doable, but it'll finally put them through that 200 barrier, which is one of those growth barriers. And in the course, we're going to put a lot of things in place that will help them to get to that next growth barrier in the next year after that. They'll probably exceed 225, 235 in the next year after that, because we're putting things in place that are going to help them to have sustainable church growth. And so that's what I'm talking about here, is taking this a step at a time and a step at a time. It's difficult for a group of 20 or 25 people to think in terms of that God has given you a vision to grow to 500, okay? You may have been given that vision. That may be great. That may be down the road. But what I'm saying is, you got to take it and talk about it a step at a time so that they can hit attainable goals. You don't want a situation to where if you're running 25 and and you hit 50 at the end of the year, and now, wow, you did what very, very few churches do in America. You double your attendance in 1 year. But if you're throwing out to the congregation that, wow, your dream is 500 and all you've got is 50 at the end of the year, wow, man, we got a long way to go. All we're running is 50. And pastor said he has a vision of 500. How are we ever going to get there? So understand the psychology of, revealing your vision a step at a time to where you get people on board. You want wins, wins, wins all the way. If you set a goal for 40, 45 by the end of the year, it's something that everybody work at. It's doable. Hey, we did it. We celebrate. We got a 72% growth in 1 year. That's tremendous. That's party time. Then you set the next goal for the next year. It might be, hey, let's go for 65. See if we can do 65 in the next year. We're believing God. You're taking it a step at a time until you get momentum. Momentum's a powerful thing. You get momentum going, and then you make those margins larger. And you hit 70. You hit 60, 65 the next year. You're going to break that 100 barrier. And then, see, when you start getting up around that 90 to 100, 110 barrier, a lot of different things take place, because then you begin to get a lot of gifting and a lot of tools in place that you're not just adding to the church. That's when, if you're wise and you're organizing for church growth carefully and wisely, that's when you begin to multiply because of the gifting and the multi-talents and the multi-personalities that you have in the church. That's where you begin to bear the fruit, the real fruit of all the things that we're going to be talking about here tonight that are important to make sure are a part of your foundation from very, very early on. All right. So hopefully I've explained myself about that big vision deal. Okay. All right. Take a breath here. Don't underestimate. Again, these aren't in any certain order. These are just things that you need to consider because they work and they're needed in every growth church. These are things that'll help you grow. I can promise you. Don't underestimate the value of fellowship. Take time to build relationships from early on. To many, relationships are more important than doctrine. As a matter of fact, disciple making is really all about building relationships. That's one of the reasons that I still love teaching the full-length home Bible studies, because they're relationship builders that you slip doctrine in on, and God gets hold of their heart as we plant the seed of the word. God gets hold of their heart through relationship and through the word. So take time, have coffee, have a lunch, have a breakfast with people that you're already beginning to develop as your key people. Love on these people. Let them be a part of your life, be a part of their life. Building those early relationships. That's how you win people to you. We can't just stand on a pulpit and preach to people and then walk away and they don't see you, hear anything from you until Wednesday night. That may work when you get much larger, but building a church from the small, if you want people to really be loyal to you, you've got to be vulnerable. You've got to let them into your life and spend some time with them. All right. Teach the importance and value of lifestyle evangelism from the start. You don't want to wait to try to get people involved in reaching lost souls, in making disciples. Build evangelism into the DNA of your church. You're creating your church culture right from the start. And I'm talking to church plants, I'm talking to AAC pastors now, or any church plant builder or small church pastor right now. You are creating your church culture from the start. You don't want to grow up a group of saints who all they do is come to church, pay their tithes, and sit quietly on a pew. That's what you don't want. You've got to, start building into their thinking the idea that everybody has a part in reaching a lost soul. Everybody may not go hanging door hangers. Everybody may not be the type that are bold enough to bring a lot of guests to church. They may not teach a home Bible study, but nonetheless, in whatever area you can get them involved. Everybody is involved. Everybody has a part in reaching a lost soul. And I won't get a lot into that right now. It's a whole nother thing that I'll talk about maybe down the road of why I say that and how that is. But everybody has a part in reaching a lost soul. Home Bible study to me is still the foundational disciple maker, in my opinion. I still use home Bible studies, still teach home Bible studies. And these are just things I'm throwing out to you. You should be yourself a home Bible study teacher. In some way, obviously, for you to want to be having a church plant or starting a plant, you obviously should be a disciple maker yourself, and leading by modeling in whatever way you're using, which will probably be the most effective home Bible study, again, modeling that to your people. Do all your saints have invite or invitation cards to leave or hand out wherever they go? These are things, again, begin to plant that seed. It doesn't take a lot of boldness to leave a card for the church, or we've used for a while cards, really nice cards that just said sit with me, and it would put the name in there. You meet somebody in your circle of influence, and you leave a card, say, hey, come sit with me sometime in church, and the card says sit with me, got the information on there of the services. You write your name in there, and you tell them, hey, when you come, ask the hostess, they'll find me and sit with me. Come sit with me for one service. You'll enjoy it. Or leaving a card anywhere, doesn't have to say sit with me, but using all the availability of all the people that you have come into your church, utilize that. We also did, we have done campaigns before of what I've called for many, many years, called invite-em-ins, where you take invite-em-ins, like it's a one a day invite-em-in, a one a day vitamin, invite-em-in, vitamin. And so that you get people to take 7 cards and hand out one a day, like one a day vitamins is what I'm trying to say. And we call that invite-em-ins, right? And so get people to commit, hey, I'm just going to give out one card to somebody and invite them one a day. I'll leave it with somebody. I'll leave it in a restaurant. I'll leave it with the guy at the gas station, my dry cleaner, whatever. I'm going to just one card a day for a week, as many as it'll take, 7 of those cards in as many weeks as you can get them to do it, getting those cards out there. Be creative with how you do that. Consider quarterly postcard mailings. I have found them through the years to be very effective. You're not going to get a ton of people to respond to a mailing. It's just like any other mailing, but obviously advertising through the mail still works. It's very effective, or you would not be getting all the junk mail from all the places that you get junk mail from every day of the week. Mailings work, and people have a tendency to keep those cards, especially a well-written, well-designed card from a local church. And what we would do is send out, we had the budget for it, we would send out 5,000 quarterly to designated area codes around the church within a certain mileage around, circumference around where our church was. And I find them to be very effective in just blasting the area like that. It's an easy way to get a foot in a door, get an introduction in a door, letting people know you're there and what you're about, and creative cards. I'm going to do, I had somebody ask me, one of our AAC pastors, just in fact today, as I'm making this recording, asked me for more information about that, and I wrote him a whole thing on how to set that up and different things about that. And I'll maybe do one of our sessions in talking about that, of how to do an effective quarterly postcard mailing and what you're wanting to do, and how to go about that. But anyway, just throwing out some ideas here to make sure that you're getting your name out in the community. All right, so now we talked about getting your name out in the community and inviting people and lifestyle evangelism and trying to teach that, inculcate that culture into the to the soul and fabric of your work, of your congregation. So now the next thing that I want to touch on is, and this is so important, folks, We must try to see our church from the eyes of a guest, or through the eyes of a guest who knows nothing about what we believe, as well as the impression we leave on established apostolics that may be looking for a church in the area. They moved into the area and they're looking for a church, and they visit your congregation. Again, we must try to see our church from the eyes of the guest that knows nothing, and those who do know something about Pentecost and apostolic way of life and doctrine and so forth, and just drop in for a visit to maybe want to join the church. All right. So people receive, and we've talked about this before, and I cannot stress this enough, people receive their first impression of an establishment within the first 8 to 10 minutes they've made up their mind. They have a first impression. This goes for churches and businesses alike. So with that in mind, we must be very intentional about being sure their first 10-minute experience is a very positive one. Now, that may sound very simplistic, and indeed the concept is, I believe. However, judging from what I've experienced through the years, especially in smaller churches, it is too often overlooked or not understood at all. And I'm not picking on smaller churches, because I've gone to some medium-sized churches that it would seem to me, and I'm not trying to be unkind, I'm trying to say what I'm saying in love, as just trying to say, hey, I'm teaching this as I see it, and I've experienced it through the years. I've encountered these things. It's not just small churches. It can be medium-sized churches. It could be large churches. Of course, it's less in large churches because they wouldn't be large if they weren't doing some of these things correctly. So it generally is in smaller and medium-sized churches in our ranks. So what do people base their first impressions on? What do they base their first impressions on? So let's just run through a few things here. First of all, they pull up. They're going to base their impression, part of their first impression, on the building itself. It's a fact. Inside and out has got to be, well painted, clean, attractive, the landscaping, etc., clean, well maintained, groomed, and inviting. It has to be. So you've got to be realistic, and just with just that in mind, for starters, pull into your driveway, pull into your parking lot, and just kind of get an idea of what people see as far as your landscaping. How does the building, what is the impression that the building gives to somebody? Signage must look professional and attractive, not, and I'm going to an extreme here, a piece of, plywood that you cut into quarters and you painted white, and you hand painted some letters in there, the name of your church, or whatever. But something that, spend a little money, get an attractive professional sign. It can be it is part of the first impression. It can be what either draws people into the next step or totally turns them off in making it look like, if I can use this term, a Bush League operation. So spend a little money on good signage, good clear signage, clearly designated guest parking. If you have parking issues, you definitely want to reserve an appropriate number of spaces for guest parking and make sure they are reserved for guest parking. If that's not an issue, not everybody needs to have designated places. You know the parking situation in your parking lot or around your church, but where it is necessary, it needs to be done. All right, this next one. I don't care how small a church is, you must have well-trained greeters and ushers. Now, when I'm saying that, if you're a small church, you don't have to think of a huge staff. We have what I'd call a huge staff of ushers and greeters at First Apostolic Church. You don't need a huge staff if you don't have a huge amount of people coming. If all that you can do is have one usher and one greeter, and that hostess or greeter is your wife, and she's just real sweet to people and shaking their hand and welcoming when they come, so be it until you get somebody to take that role. But you must have somebody greeting people when they walk through the door, making them feel welcome, not just walking in on their own and looking around and trying to find their way on their own. You definitely want somebody there, and if you have people that you can work with, a couple people that will help in both of those functions, greeters and ushers. Most people feel more awkward in smaller churches than they do in larger churches. When I say people, I'm talking about guests. Most guests, when they come into a brand new environment, they're going to feel more awkward in a smaller church than in a larger church, simply because they are more exposed in a smaller church. So they must be made to feel at home and to feel comfortable. Just picture what is going on. You're running 20 people in your church. More than likely, if those are pretty fairly regular people coming, most of those people are accustomed to each other. They're accustomed to the flow of the service, what's going on. They're probably communicating with each other at some point, talking with each other, and they're feeling okay coming. So now a person comes in, or a couple come in, and there's only 20 people there. And so everybody looks at them. They're obviously, maybe the only guests that Sunday. They're going to feel awkward, right? Because they're the only ones who are not a part of the family. So they're going to feel like outsiders trying to push their way in. So they must be made to feel at home, to feel comfortable. Guests like that need to be seated next to your more friendly and outgoing people. It should not be just a greeter or a couple of greeters or an usher or the pastor and his wife that are greeting them. Folks need to be trained to go out of their way. Please see what's going on here. Understand what I'm talking about as far as the first impression of people coming to them, welcoming them, asking them some questions, making them feel at home, like they're welcome. The whole atmosphere when they enter the sanctuary should be uplifting. At FAC, we always have music, very uplifting, apostolic. I think we've got our own radio station that they pipe in. The wonderful apostolic worship music is always 24/7 in the background, always, except for when we have service going on. And then the services are piped all through our building, everywhere, in the classrooms and our entire massive building. They're all through all of the speakers, all through the building, and it'll soon be outside also in the parking lot. We have music or the service itself playing. There's not a time before service where people are just sitting around silently with a morose expression on their face, waiting for church to start. And then guests walk into that atmosphere like they're getting ready to sit, like you feel like you're at a funeral, where everybody is quiet and just kind of sitting there waiting for the funeral to start. I'm being very plain here, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm trying to just make us think a little bit of first impression and what we look like sometimes to guests. And so it doesn't take a lot to have good gospel, godly, apostolic music, not blaring, but playing in the background, making people feel comfortable, visiting with one another, being prepared to receive guests if they come through the door. There's nothing even wrong with, giving an example, serving coffee and cookies before service. If you're the size church that, you're kind of like down home and you've got 20, 30 people, man, there's nothing wrong with having, some coffee, a little area where you're serving coffees, cookie, or invite a guest over, say, hey, would you like a cup of coffee or a glass of juice or something, and getting to know people. Put your most friendly people there to be the host or hostess of a little area like that. I mean, just think outside the box a little bit of anything you can do to make people feel like when they come in, wow, these people are all right. I enjoyed that. They were very, very friendly. They acknowledged that I was there. There are churches that I've gone into to minister that uh, I will tell you that have not always been the most friendly. You don't always feel the most friendly vibe from everybody. After, yeah, if they get to know you're there, and you know the pastor and you're going to speak or whatever, it becomes a little more friendly. But I just sometimes think of, wow, how it is for a guest walking in the door of a situation like that. My word, you know, our walk-ins, just like any businesses pay big bucks to get walk-in traffic, to get people in their door. They bend over backwards, have huge advertising budgets just to get people to walk in the door, because they know that the prime potential sale is with walk-ins. And so it is in our churches. We want to make absolutely sure we give every reason to come back and visit us and want to be a part of us, and absolutely no reason at all on a negative side that they question whether they would want to come back in our door again. So if you're wanting to build, you have got to maximize the possibility of you holding on to people that are coming to see what you're about, to check you out. Okay? Absolutely vital, these things, that first impression stuff. And there's more to it. I'm just touching on some things to throw it out there, little food for thought. Talking about pre-service, what kind of focus, and we're talking about building a culture in your church, what kind of focus and importance have you placed on pre-service prayer? I will tell you this. Every revival church that I've been in, and including the one that I'm in right now, has a big focus on pre-service prayer, and not just for the staff. I've been to churches where they're big on making sure the staff comes together in a little room to pray together, but that's not filtering down to the saints, where the saints realize, hey, we need to have 15 minutes, half hour before every one of our services. We have half hour of prayer at FAC, everybody, and there will be hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds in the prayer room praying before service, which is why we have the kind of powerful services and moves of God that we do. Everybody who, and I'm sorry to keep using the church that I'm on staff at, the church that I attend, FAC Maryville, but I'm just trying to give you an example of what revival churches do, what causes them to be revival churches. Everybody in any position at FAC, I don't care if you're in the choir, you're on the security team, you're on the parking team, hostess, Sunday school teacher, choir member, every choir member, I don't care what your role, you're considered to be in leadership, on staff. And so before Sunday morning service at 9:15, there is staff prayer, 9:15 to 9:30, staff prayer. There will be probably, I would estimate, 250, 300 people there at our staff prayer. If you start missing staff prayer, your team leader or your department head, is required to say something to you about that. You cannot stay on any team long without being involved in staff prayer. It is a requirement of being involved at FAC. And a half hour before every church service is that prayer room is open, and anybody that's in leadership or on staff is again required to go in there at least for 15 to 20 minutes before service to have prayer time. And of course, many others that are not doing anything on staff also go in and pray. So it's something that is a focus at FAC, and again, in every revival church that I've been, is a focus. Prayer is a focus. Just like I started out talking about the importance of the pastor and ministry and leadership, making sure they're praying and fasting for the growth of the church. To have that, then that's modeling it, then teaching that, and making sure that part of that pre-service activity going on is, if you don't have a prayer room, then man, at that altar right there in your sanctuary, having some pre-service prayer time, preparing that atmosphere, making that atmosphere an atmosphere of expectation. And folks, again, I'm talking the realities of growing a church. These are the realities. In my thinking, in my experience, in my mind, there is no other way around what I'm saying right now. You know, any one of these that I'm talking about here tonight that you leave out is going to show in some way in your growth pattern, in your growth trajectory. I promise you that it'll show. These are all essential ingredients that I have observed through the years that are required in a growth church, a revival church. All right, pastors and leaders need to show your passion every service. People need to feel the excitement. People need to feel the exuberance and that anticipation and expectation of what God is going to do at this service. Need to show that passion for your vision and the mission statement that you have every service. It's got to be there. All right, let's look at some practical issues now in some other ideas. Do you have a professional, up-to-date website? We're talking about attracting people to your congregation, to your church, to your building. Do you have a professional, up-to-date website? You may or may not be aware. You may or may not understand this. Websites are the new yellow pages. People do not grab a paper yellow page book anymore, at least those that are under the age of 80. Do not grab a yellow page big book off a shelf and flip through it and look under churches and find your church. They go on the web and they Google churches in their area, or apostolic churches or Pentecostal churches in the area. You've got to have a good professional website. To do that, you don't need to spend a ton of money. You would first want to tap anybody in your church, like a young person who is probably very good at this. You may not be aware of it, but you could ask around a little bit. You maybe know somebody, have a family member, a friend of a friend, somebody that is very good with computers and online social media and so forth that can help you with a website, help you get a website together. The thing about a website, to make it effective though, obviously it needs to be attractive, well designed. Got to have key information about your service times and what you believe and all those things, but in a common language, not Christianese or apostolic-ese. The website should be speaking to people who are not in the church. Websites are not for our saints. Our saints are in the church. Website is for the most part, is for people that are looking for a church. So it needs to speak to their need, draw them of for what they're looking for. All right. Part of that first impression is your website. Man, if they pass by and they see your building and it looks nice and it's attractive, and they decide, I want to Google that church, see what they're about, or they get one of your mailing in the mail and you've got your website on there, and they pull up that website, and the most recent event that you have on there is your Christmas service from last year, and the one before that is your Easter service from 2018. It's again not leaving a good first impression about how attentive you are in communicating things that are going on to the church. You can put photos up on there of altar service, or ministers that are coming and ministering, or action shots of worshiping in the church, your praise team, any number of things to keep it flowing on the website. And again, a young person can be very good at helping to keep it active and current. Also, if you understand social media at all, if you have any understanding at all of social media, or you've got a young person who does, man, you want to be involved with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or at least any one of those. There's so much that you can do with that, and that can be for folks in the church and those that you're trying to attract. But if you understand social media at all, use it. It is very, very beneficial. It is very much a part of today's world of young couples, youth, etc. All right, that's how they communicate. This is some practical stuff, obviously. If you want to be attracting families as quickly as possible, you need to develop a good children's ministry as quickly as possible. Obviously, if you want families there, you want to be able to do something with the children also to keep the children. If children, when guests come and they've got children or young people, and they love the Sunday school, they love what's going on, that is going to be a huge factor in that family coming back again, the parents wanting to come back if they feel like their children were really being fed and loved on, and they enjoyed it and they want to come back for whatever reason. So if you intend on growing with families as quickly as possible, you need to tap into whatever talents you have for people that are want to be involved with children's ministry. Bottom line here, what I'm saying is you want to grow using the strengths and gifting that God has already given you in the people that you have in your congregation. Grow around those strengths. Don't go try to grow in some way and be inviting people to something, expecting something that you're not able to deliver. You want to grow initially on just what strengths you have. Later on, as you grow and you get a broader spectrum of different personalities and gifting and people that are coming, you can change that focus at any time. You can add to the already existing ministries and focus that you've been doing. But look carefully at the ministry or the gifting that you've already got and focus on that. That's what you want to draw in initially and build a foundation on. Then you can grow and change your focus from there as the people that come have different gifting and so forth. Also, you want to have a good discipleship course, a good discipleship program in place. This is a part of organizing for church growth. What you don't want is people coming in, getting the Holy Ghost in an emotional moment and getting baptized, and then you never seeing them again. You want to have something to be able to tie them in right from the get-go. Home Bible study, discipleship, ministry training. That's what I believe in, and I've always done in the churches where I have worked with outreach. Home Bible study, discipleship course, and then training them, getting them involved as quickly as possible in doing something, whatever their talent and gifting is, and so forth. Another practical thing, do you have a database where keeping all the info on your saints and guests to be able to contact them for special services and events that you have through the year? Everybody that walks through the door, you want to try to get into your database that you're able to communicate with them. You'd be amazed at how quickly you can build a database of names and emails and phone numbers that you can text or email, invitations and keep in touch with them. Plus the fact it's a very practical way to communicate with your own congregation, with your people. Communication is the key. Communication is the key of keeping people together and helping them to feel a part of that body, that's my church. It's not a church. It's not the church. It's my church. And communication is a big key to that. So I believe that database, regardless of the size of the church, is absolutely essential. There are databases out there, again, Google them. There are databases that you can get totally free, especially for a smaller church. Usually, if you're running less than 50 to 75, a lot of these databases are totally free until you get a certain number of households in that database. And so, get one that has the things that you feel that you need, that is good with for using to follow up with with guests, and has different ability to put people in different groups, so you can contact them by group, say those working the Sunday school, those that are musicians or singers or your hostesses or ushers or whatever your grouping is that you have in the church, that you're able to contact them by pull a group up and blast either a text to them or an email. That's the best, most efficient way to keep in contact with your saints and with guests. So database is another essential key, in my opinion. Especially as you're for smaller churches, stay focused on a few key programs. Say no to unproductive programs that distract from your overall strategy and mission. Sometimes you've got to be firm, you got to be strong. And again, just like we talked about a time audit, you need to do an audit of, maybe we'll call it an activity audit or a ministry audit. What are you doing that is taking up saints' time and energy and maybe even finances that is really bringing in nothing, and as far as people or any real positive thing to your church or congregation? It's just filling a space. So you want to stay focused on a few key programs, and then you can always add to those things as your congregation grows. All right. You're not there. I put a note here. You're not there to be all things to all people. Okay. If you've got 3 ladies in the church, it is not likely that right now you need a ladies department right now. What is your guest follow-up like? What are you doing? What have you designed to consistently for guest follow-up? What do you do for that? Something that needs to be looked into and carefully planned and stick with it. And then I'll end with this: pastor, leader, whoever's listening to this, wanting to get to the next level, pastor or leader wanting to get to the next level, you must continually improve your leadership skills and your people skills. There's not one, I'll say this, one of the big differences between a pastor of 30 or 35 and a pastor of 300 or 400 is a lot is involved in their leadership skills and their people skills. Now, you may not think that, but that's my opinion. A lot of the difference is in their leadership skills and in their people skills. Not total, but I said a lot. A lot has to do with that. So if you want to grow your church, you need to grow you. We need to grow ourselves. For our ministries to grow, we need to grow. We need to grow so that God can expand our borders. God can use us to a wider audience. We need to grow ourselves. So keep that in mind. And then finally, the bottom line, as you've heard me say many, many times, if you've listened to It Matters sessions much, you must have a game plan in organizing for church growth. You must have a game plan. You cannot go about it helter-skelter or shoot from the hip. You've got to have a good game plan. All right? I'll end with that. God bless those of you who made it all the way through this probably hour-plus video. Anytime I can be of help, feel free to give me a call or email me anytime. I am on the Missions America page. You can contact me by cell. You can message me on Facebook. Again, I'm on the Missions America team as the Church Growth and Resource Director. Message me there. Text me, message me, give me a phone call. Whatever way you need to contact me, I'm available to help. All right. God bless, and God bless your churches.